Most people are not weak because they lack talent. They are weak because they are emotionally exposed. Every insult distracts them. Every delay frustrates them. Every opinion controls them. This audiobook will teach you emotional detachment, not as avoidance, not as coldness, but as mental armor. When you detach emotionally, you think clearly. When you think clearly, you act decisively. And when you act without emotional interference, life stops controlling you. This is not about feeling less. This is about being unmovable. Chapter 1. Emotional attachment is silent weakness. Most people think weakness looks loud. They imagine panic, chaos, emotional collapse. But real weakness is quiet. It hides behind attachment. Attachment to approval. Attachment to outcomes. Attachment to being understood, respected, validated. And because it's quiet, most people never see it draining their power. Emotional attachment turns neutral events into personal attacks. A delayed message becomes rejection. A comment becomes disrespect. A setback becomes a threat to identity. You react instead of respond. And every reaction costs you control. That's the key. When something controls your emotional state, it controls you. Say it again. If it controls my emotions, it controls me. You don't need their permission to stay stable. But attachment makes you act like you do. Emotional attachment creates urgency where none exists. Urgency to defend. Urgency to explain. Urgency to prove. And urgency is the enemy of power. Power moves slowly. Power observes. Power waits. Emotionally attached people rush. They speak too fast. They decide too early. They give away leverage without realizing it. You have a choice. You can keep reacting automatically, or you can reclaim authority over your inner state. That's the difference between being controlled and being in control. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If your mood changes based on external events, your mind is not leading. It's following. Following people. Following outcomes. Following opinions. And a mind that follows cannot lead a life. You don't lose power all at once. You lose it in small reactions. A defensive tone. An emotional message you didn't need to send. Each one feels minor. Together, they define your identity. Emotional attachment convinces you that everything is personal. But most things aren't. People act from their own fears, their own insecurities, their own internal chaos. Attachment makes you absorb what was never meant for you. Detachment creates distance. Distance creates clarity. And clarity is where strength lives. Let's be precise. Detachment is not indifference. It is discipline. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about refusing to be commanded by it. You feel the emotion. You acknowledge it. And then you choose your response. You have a choice. Most people never pause long enough to realize that. Here's the behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking, how do I feel about this? Start asking, what is required here? Emotion asks for relief. Discipline asks for results. It's not about feeling calm. It's about acting calm. That's the key. When your mood depends on outcomes, anxiety takes control. When it depends on people, insecurity takes control. When it depends on validation, weakness takes control. And none of those states produce clear thinking. Emotionally detached people think in layers. They see consequences. They see timing. They see leverage. Attached people only see the moment. You don't need their approval to remain composed. You don't need the outcome to feel resolved before acting. You don't need reassurance to stay steady. You need discipline. Say it clearly. If it controls my emotions, it controls me. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. Here's a simple practice. When something triggers you, do nothing for 10 seconds. No reply. No explanation. No reaction. Just observe. That pause is power. That pause breaks the chain. You're not avoiding. You're choosing. You have a choice. Detachment removes urgency. And urgency is where mistakes happen. Calm creates space. Space creates options. Options create authority. That's not philosophy. That's behavioral mechanics. Watch how emotionally detached people move. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't chase validation. They don't over-explain. They let silence do the work. Because silence doesn't leak power. Emotion does. Here's another truth most people don't want to hear. Your reactions train people how to treat you. When you react emotionally, you signal vulnerability. When you stay composed, you signal strength. Not aggression. not dominance. Stability. That's the key. Attachment makes you predictable. Predictability makes you manageable. Detachment makes you unreadable. Unreadable creates respect. You don't need to demand it. You don't need to announce it. It emerges naturally when your emotions stop leading. This chapter is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming unshakable. Unshakable people are not emotionless. They are selective. They decide what deserves energy, and most things don't. From this moment forward, start noticing. What pulls your emotions fastest? What comments linger in your mind? What outcomes make you anxious? Those are your attachment points. And attachment points are leverage points. Remove the attachment. You remove the control. Detachment restores authority because it returns ownership of your inner world. You stop being pulled. You start choosing. Calm replaces chaos. Choice replaces impulse. That's the foundation of mental strength. You've seen the problem. Now you understand the cost. Emotional attachment is silent weakness, and silence makes it dangerous. But awareness breaks the spell. You've learned where power leaks. Next, you'll learn how to stop mistaking control for coldness. You don't need to feel less. You need to govern better. You reclaimed your awareness. Now let's sharpen your control. Chapter 2. Detachment is not coldness, it is control. Most people misunderstand detachment. They think it means becoming distant, unfeeling, disconnected. That misunderstanding keeps them weak. Because emotional detachment is not about removing emotion. It is about governing it. You still feel anger. You still feel disappointment. You still feel desire, excitement, frustration. The difference is simple and absolute. Those feelings no longer decide what you do next. That's the key. Cold people suppress emotion. They bury it. They deny it. They pretend it isn't there. Strong people don't do that. Strong people observe emotion. They notice it rise. They name it. They let it exist. And then they choose their behavior independently of it. Say the phrase clearly. I feel it, but I do not follow it. Repeat it until it becomes automatic. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure always leaks. That's why cold people eventually explode. They snap. They burn bridges. They self-sabotage. Control doesn't explode. Control stabilizes. Detachment is emotional maturity, not emotional absence. Here's where most people lose the plot. They believe acting on emotion is honesty. They believe restraint is fake. That belief is expensive. Because honesty without control is chaos. And chaos destroys trust, momentum, and credibility. You don't need to express everything you feel. You need to decide what deserves expression. You have a choice. Think about the people you respect most. They are not emotionally reactive. They are not dramatic. They are not constantly explaining themselves. They are consistent. Consistency creates authority. That's the key. Control creates consistency. Consistency creates predictability. Predictability creates trust. And trust compounds into long-term power. In work, in relationships, in leadership. Emotionally reactive people feel intense in the moment. But intensity fades. Consistency lasts. Let's get practical. When emotion shows up, most people ask, what should I say? How should I respond? That's already too late. The correct question is, what outcome do I want? Emotion wants release. Control wants results. It's not about passion. It's about discipline. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their approval to stay quiet. You don't need to justify your composure. Silence is not weakness. Silence is selection. You are selecting restraint. Here's a simple rule. If emotion pushes you to act immediately, wait. If calm suggests patience, listen. Emotion is loud. Control is quiet. That's why most people miss it. Strong people don't fight their emotions. They don't argue with them. They don't shame themselves for having them. They let emotion speak. But they don't hand it the steering wheel. Say it again. I feel it, but I do not follow it. That sentence alone can change your life if you live it. Detachment creates space between stimulus and response. In that space lives power. Without that space, you are predictable. And predictability makes you controllable. You have a choice. Notice this pattern. Emotionally uncontrolled people explain themselves excessively. They defend their tone. They justify their reactions. Controlled people don't explain. They adjust behavior, or they don't. Explanation is often emotional leakage. Here's another uncomfortable truth. People respect boundaries they cannot move emotionally. If someone can provoke you, they can steer you. If they can't read you, they can't control you. Detachment makes you unreadable. That's not manipulation. That's self-possession. This is where consistency becomes dominance. Not dominance over others. Dominance over yourself. And self-dominance is the only kind that lasts. Emotionally detached people don't wake up different every day. They don't operate based on mood. They don't let stress dictate standards. They show up the same. Same tone. Same pace. Same principles. That stability is rare. And rarity creates value. You don't need to kill emotion to be strong. You need to contain it. Think of emotion like fire. Uncontrolled fire destroys. Contained fire powers engines. Detachment is containment. That's the key. Here's a daily practice. When you feel something strongly, don't label it good or bad. Label it temporary. Feelings pass. Consequences remain. Strong people act for consequences, not comfort. Most regret comes from emotional obedience. Words said too fast. Decisions made too early. Reactions that felt right, but cost later. Detachment prevents regret by slowing the moment. You have a choice. Let's correct another lie. Being calm does not mean being passive. Being controlled does not mean being weak. In fact, it's the opposite. The calm person dictates the emotional temperature of the room. The reactive person follows it. That's authority. You don't win by overpowering others emotionally. You win by not being overpowered yourself. And that requires discipline practiced daily. This chapter is about redefining strength. Strength is not expression. Strength is regulation. Strength is choosing behavior that aligns with your long-term objectives, even when emotion demands something else. Especially then. Say it one last time before we move on. I feel it, but I do not follow it. Let that be your internal code. You've learned that detachment is not coldness. It's control. And control creates consistency. Consistency creates power. Now that you understand how to govern emotion, it's time to address the reflex that steals most people's energy. You've gained control. Next, you'll learn how to stop wasting it. Chapter 3. Stop reacting, start observing. Reaction is automatic. Observation is chosen. That single difference separates weakness from authority. Most people live in reaction. They speak before thinking. They decide before seeing clearly. They move before understanding what is actually happening. Reaction feels fast, feels honest, feels powerful, but it is not. Reaction is an emotional reflex, and reflexes exist to protect the body, not to lead a life. That is the key. When you react, you hand control to the outside world. Someone speaks and your mood shifts. Something happens and your focus collapses. An obstacle appears and frustration takes over. You are no longer directing yourself. You are responding to stimulus. You have a choice. You can continue to react automatically, or you can observe deliberately. Observation is mental authority. It means you see the emotion without becoming it. You notice the trigger without obeying it. You allow the moment to slow down. That pause changes everything. Say this clearly. Nothing requires my immediate reaction. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. Most mistakes are not made because of lack of intelligence. They are made because of speed. People rush to respond, rush to explain, rush to defend. They confuse speed with strength. But speed without clarity is weakness. When you pause before responding, emotion loses leverage. Anger fades. Urgency dissolves. Pressure weakens. Not because the situation changed, but because your position did. You step back. That distance restores control. Observation creates space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between feeling and action. Space between impulse and decision. In that space lives power. Without that space, you are predictable. And predictability is exploitable. Watch emotionally reactive people. They interrupt. They escalate. They overreact to minor events. They feel drained because reaction consumes energy. Observation preserves it. That is not philosophy. That is mechanics. Reaction is expensive. It costs attention. It costs composure. It costs credibility. Observation costs nothing. And returns everything. Here is the shift you must make. Stop asking what should I say right now. Start asking what is actually happening. Those are not the same question. Reaction answers the first. Observation answers the second. Emotion always wants action. Right now. Immediately. That urgency is an illusion. Nothing requires my immediate reaction. Say it again. When you observe instead of react, you gain psychological distance. Distance does not mean avoidance. It means perspective. You see patterns instead of moments. You see motives instead of words. You see leverage instead of emotion. That clarity cannot exist in reaction mode. Most people believe reacting shows confidence. They believe silence looks weak. That belief keeps them stuck. Silence is not weakness when it is chosen. Silence is control. The person who reacts first usually loses position. The person who waits usually gains it. Observation allows you to choose timing. And timing is power. Say less. Later. On purpose. That is discipline. Here is a practical rule. If something provokes you emotionally, delay your response. If it flatters you emotionally, delay your response. Emotion in either direction distorts judgment. You have a choice. Observe your body. Tension in the jaw. Tightness in the chest. Restlessness in the hands. Those signals are not commands. They are information. Strong people treat emotion as data, not orders. Reaction makes you linear. Someone pushes. You push back. Someone criticizes. You defend. Observation makes you strategic. You decide if response is even necessary. Often it is not. Most arguments do not need to be won. Most explanations do not need to be given. Most reactions do not need to exist. Observation reveals that. Say the phrase again. Nothing requires my immediate reaction. Let that become your default. When you stop reacting, people notice. Not because you changed them. Because you changed access to you. They cannot pull emotion from you easily anymore. That creates respect without force. Observation also protects your energy. Reaction keeps you mentally busy with things that do not matter. Observation filters relevance. You stop wasting attention on noise. That is mental strength. Under pressure, observation becomes even more valuable. Pressure speeds most people up. They panic. They rush. Strong people slow down. They breathe. They watch. They wait. Clarity returns. This is not passive behavior. This is controlled behavior. You are still engaged. You are simply not emotionally hijacked. That distinction changes outcomes. Here is a daily practice. When something triggers you, say nothing internally for 5 seconds. No story. No judgment. Just awareness. That small pause breaks the reflex. You have a choice. Reaction shrinks your world to the moment. Observation expands it. You start seeing consequences. You start seeing options. You start seeing exits. Reaction traps. Observation frees. People who master observation become difficult to manipulate. They do not give emotional feedback easily. They do not confirm expectations. They do not reward provocation. That makes them mentally dominant. This chapter is about reclaiming your attention. Attention is life energy. Reaction bleeds it. Observation preserves it. Once you stop reacting, something surprising happens. You become calmer without trying. More focused without forcing. More respected without demanding. Because calm is the natural state of control. You are learning how to slow the world down internally. That is rare. And rarity creates power. You no longer need to win moments. You need to master positioning. Observation gives you that advantage. You have learned how to stop reacting. You have learned how to observe. Now it is time to understand why calm always outlasts intensity. You regained your space. Next, you will learn how to dominate time. Chapter 4. Why calm always wins over intensity. Intensity looks powerful at first. It is loud. It is dramatic. It demands attention. Calm does not. Calm looks boring. Calm looks slow. Calm looks unimpressive to people addicted to stimulation. And that is why calm wins. Intensity burns fast. Calm compounds. That is the key. Most people confuse emotional intensity with strength. They think passion equals power. They think force equals progress. They think urgency equals importance. Those assumptions are costly. Because intensity consumes energy faster than it produces results. Calm conserves energy. And energy preserved becomes leverage. Look closely at intense people. They start strong. They speak boldly. They act decisively. And then they fade. They burn out. They become inconsistent. They lose direction. Not because they lacked ability, But because intensity is unsustainable, calm does not peak. Calm endures. Calm shows up the same every day. Same tone, same pace, same standards. That consistency is rare, and rarity creates power. Here is the truth most people resist. Life is not won in moments of excitement. It is won in long stretches of discipline. Intensity thrives in short bursts. Calm thrives over time. Say it clearly. Calm outlasts chaos. Repeat it. Emotional detachment removes drama from decisions. Drama clouds judgment. Drama narrows vision. Drama creates urgency where none exists. Calm strips decisions down to what matters. What is the objective? What is the cost? What is the next step? Nothing extra. When emotion leads, logic follows too late. When calm leads, logic is already present. That difference changes outcomes. You have a choice. You can decide while emotionally charged, or you can decide while emotionally neutral. One creates regret. The other creates results. Calm people are not passive. They are precise. They do not waste movement. They do not waste words. They do not waste energy. Everything is intentional. That is not boredom. That is mastery. Most people chase motivation. Motivation is emotional intensity, and motivation is unreliable. Calm people do not chase motivation. They rely on structure. Structure does not care how you feel. Structure keeps you moving when emotion fades. That is dominance. Intensity demands attention from others. Calm commands it, not through force, through stability. People trust what does not fluctuate. Think about leadership. The most intense person in the room is rarely the leader. The calmest one often is. Because under pressure, people look for stability. They follow the person whose emotions do not spike. That is instinctive. Calm becomes an anchor. When others panic, calm holds. When others rush, calm slows. When others react, calm observes. And slowly, without trying, calm sets the tone. That is influence. Say the phrase again. Calm outlasts chaos. Let it settle. Chaos is exhausting. Drama drains focus. Emotional swings drain clarity. Constant intensity drains life force. Calm is efficient. It allows you to operate longer, think clearer, recover faster. That advantage compounds daily. Emotionally detached people make fewer decisions, but better ones. They do not react to every signal. They do not chase every opportunity. They do not fight every battle. They choose. And choice is power. Intensity makes everything feel urgent. Urgency creates mistakes. Calm removes false deadlines. It reminds you that most things can wait, and most things should. Nothing breaks momentum like unnecessary urgency. You do not need to be intense to be effective. You need to be consistent. It is not about passion. It is about discipline. Say it clearly. It is not about how strongly you feel. It is about how steadily you act. Calm gives you perspective. When emotion rises, perspective shrinks. When calm returns, perspective expands. You start seeing second-order effects. You start seeing consequences. You start seeing timing. That is strategic thinking. Intensity is addictive. Feels meaningful. Feels alive. It feels like progress. But most of the time it is noise. Calm cuts through noise. Here is a simple test. If something makes you emotional, delay your decision. If something excites you intensely, delay your decision. Calm decisions are better decisions. You have a choice. Calm also protects relationships. Intensity escalates conflict. Calm de-escalates it. When one person stays calm, arguments lose fuel. Drama requires participation. Calm refuses to participate. This is not avoidance. This is control. You are not running from emotion. You are standing above it. Watch how calm people speak. They do not rush to finish sentences. They pause without anxiety. They let silence exist. Silence does not threaten them. Because calm has nothing to prove. Intensity wants recognition. Calm does not. And that makes calm dangerous to those who rely on emotional leverage. Over time, calm people build trust. Trust leads to opportunity. Opportunity leads to influence. Influence leads to power. Not overnight. Over years. That is the compounding effect most people never experience. Say it again. Calm outlasts chaos. Let that become your operating principle. You are not here to win emotional moments. You are here to win outcomes. Outcomes require patience. Patience requires calm. This chapter is about choosing longevity over excitement, about choosing control over drama, about choosing clarity over chaos. You now understand why intensity fails and calm dominates. But there is another source of chaos you must remove if you want true control. Other people's opinions. You have mastered your pace. Now it is time to master your focus. Chapter 5. Detach from opinions to regain focus. Most people are not distracted because life is demanding. They are distracted because they are emotionally available to opinions. Every comment pulls them. Every judgment slows them. Every reaction fragments their attention. Opinions are not powerful by default. They only become powerful when you engage emotionally. That is the key. Most distraction is voluntary. An opinion cannot disturb you unless you invite it in. A judgment cannot weaken you unless you absorb it. A comment cannot derail you unless you assign it meaning. You have a choice. You can let opinions pass like background noise, or you can let them become the center of your attention. One leads to focus. The other leads to exhaustion. Emotionally attached people scan constantly for feedback. They check reactions. They reread messages. They replay conversations. Not to improve, but to feel approved. That habit is expensive, because approval-seeking splits your mind in half. One part doing the work, the other part wondering how it looks. That division kills focus. Here is the truth. Opinions do not deserve equal weight. Some are informed. Most are emotional projections. Many are irrelevant. Detachment filters relevance. You decide what matters, not the crowd. Say the phrase clearly. I extract value, not validation. Repeat it. Criticism is information. Praise is information. Nothing more. When you detach, criticism loses its sting and praise loses its pull. You stop riding emotional highs and lows created by other people. Your internal state stabilizes. That stability sharpens focus. Most people think detachment means ignoring feedback. That is wrong. Detachment means processing feedback without ego. You take what is useful. You discard what is noise. No emotional reaction required. That is control. Approval seeking makes you reactive. You adjust too quickly. You second-guess too often. You abandon direction too easily. Because you are not anchored to purpose. You are anchored to perception. And perception changes daily. When approval is the objective, focus disappears. You start optimizing for likability instead of results. You start explaining instead of executing. You start defending instead of progressing. That is not discipline. That is dependence. Focus returns when approval is removed from the equation. When your only metric becomes alignment with your standards. You do not need everyone to agree. You do not need everyone to understand. You do not need everyone to approve. You need consistency. Here is a hard question. If no one could comment on your life, would you still do what you are doing? If the answer is no, your focus is compromised. Detachment frees attention. Attention is limited. Every opinion you emotionally engage with takes a piece of it. By the end of the day, most people are tired not from work, but from mental noise. They spent their energy reacting to things that did not move their life forward. Strong people are selective listeners. They do not listen to everyone. They listen to patterns. They listen to results. They measure opinions against reality, not emotion. Say it again. I extract value, not validation. Praise is dangerous when you depend on it. It creates attachment. Attachment creates fear of loss. Fear of loss creates hesitation. You start protecting an image instead of building substance. Detachment prevents that trap. Criticism is dangerous when you personalize it. You defend instead of evaluate. You resist instead of learn. Detachment removes identity from feedback. It becomes neutral, useful or not. That is all. Most opinions are reflections of the speaker, not assessments of you. Their mood, their bias, their insecurity. Detached people understand this. They do not carry other people's emotional baggage. Focus is not about trying harder. It is about removing interference. Opinions are interference when you treat them as authority. They are irrelevant when you treat them as data. Notice this. The most focused people do not talk much about what they are doing. They are too busy doing it. They do not argue online. They do not explain themselves constantly. They do not chase consensus. They execute quietly. Detachment also protects momentum. Opinions slow momentum because they invite hesitation. Should I change direction? Should I respond? Should I defend this? Momentum dies in those questions. Here is a rule. If an opinion does not improve your execution, it does not deserve your attention. Simple. You do not need to win arguments. You need to win time. Time spent reacting to opinions is time stolen from progress. That trade never works in your favor. Emotionally detached people are internally referenced. They measure themselves against their own standards. That makes them resilient. External noise cannot shake internal alignment. This is where real confidence comes from. Not from praise. Not from approval. From knowing you are acting according to principle. That confidence is quiet and unbreakable. Say it again slowly. I extract value, not validation. Let that become your filter. When approval is no longer the objective, something shifts. Your work becomes cleaner. Your thinking becomes sharper. Your energy becomes stable. You stop performing. You start producing. Detachment does not isolate you. It frees you. You can listen without absorbing. You can engage without reacting. You can improve without bending. That is balance. This chapter is about reclaiming focus. Focus is your most valuable asset. Opinions compete for it. Detachment protects it. You have removed emotional noise. You have filtered relevance. You have reclaimed attention. Now it is time to use that clarity to think long-term. You freed your focus. Next, you will learn how to extend your vision beyond the moment. Chapter 6. Emotional distance creates strategic thinking. Most people do not lack intelligence. They lack distance. They are too close to the moment. Too involved emotionally. Too eager for immediate relief. Strategy cannot exist there. Strategy requires space. It requires time. It requires emotional distance. That is the key. Emotion is obsessed with now. It wants comfort. It wants certainty. It wants resolution. Immediately. Strategy is not interested in relief. Strategy is interested in outcome. And outcomes live in the future. When emotion leads, time collapses. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels personal. Everything feels necessary right now. That mental compression kills strategic thinking. You cannot see 5 steps ahead when you are consumed by the next 5 seconds. Detachment stretches your time horizon. You stop asking what feels good today. You start asking what works over years. That shift separates operators from reactors. Say the phrase clearly. Short-term emotion costs long-term power. Repeat it. Every impulsive decision is a trade. Comfort now for consequence later. Relief now for limitation later. Emotion now for regret later. Detached people see that trade before making it. That awareness saves them. Strategic thinking is slow thinking. It resists urgency. It resists pressure. It resists emotional manipulation. That resistance is not stubbornness. It is discipline. Look at most bad decisions. They were not logical mistakes. They were emotional bargains. Anger made someone speak. Fear made someone quit. Excitement made someone rush. Emotion shortened the timeline. Distance restores perspective. When you step back emotionally, patterns appear. You stop seeing isolated events. You start seeing trajectories. And trajectories matter more than moments. Emotion pulls you into drama. Drama is time-consuming. Drama is energy-draining. Drama feels important but produces nothing. Strategy ignores drama. Strategy asks what actually moves the needle. Detached people are hard to rush. Pressure does not speed them up. Deadlines do not distort their thinking. Opinions do not hijack their direction. They move deliberately. That is power. Say it again. Short-term emotion costs long-term power. Let it sink in. Emotional distance also protects consistency. When your decisions depend on mood, your direction changes constantly. Today motivated. Tomorrow discouraged. Next week uncertain. Strategy demands stability. You cannot build something meaningful with emotional volatility. Here is a practical shift. Before making a decision, ask this. Will this matter in a year? If the answer is no, slow down. If the answer is yes, detach further. Urgency is usually a lie. Most people sabotage their future to feel better today. They vent instead of wait. They spend instead of invest. They quit instead of adjust. Emotion makes those choices feel justified. Strategy sees the cost. Detached people tolerate discomfort. They can sit with uncertainty. They can delay gratification. They can endure temporary dissatisfaction. That tolerance gives them range. Strategic thinkers play long games. Long games reward patience. Long games punish impulse. That is why most people never win them. Emotional distance also sharpens risk assessment. Fear exaggerates danger. Excitement underestimates it. Detachment balances both. You see risk clearly. You accept it intentionally. This is not about being slow. It is about being precise. Speed without direction is waste. Strategy values direction over motion. Notice this pattern. People who always need to feel good now rarely feel good later. People who accept temporary discomfort often build permanent stability. That is not coincidence. Say it again. Short-term emotion costs long-term power. Strategic thinking also reduces regret. When decisions are made calmly, you own them. You do not blame stress. You do not blame emotion. You do not blame pressure. Ownership strengthens identity. Detached people do not ask how to escape discomfort. They ask how to leverage it. Discomfort becomes feedback. Delay becomes advantage. Silence becomes positioning. Emotion collapses options. Strategy expands them. The calmer you are, the more options you see. Options are leverage. This chapter is about lifting your gaze, getting out of the moment, out of the reaction, out of the emotional loop, and into trajectory. You are no longer reacting to today. You are shaping tomorrow. That is the difference between motion and progress. You have learned how emotional distance creates strategic vision. Now there is one final trap that pulls people back into emotional thinking. Attachment to results. You extended your timeline. Next, you will learn how to detach from outcomes without losing ambition. Chapter 7. Detach from outcomes, commit to execution. Most people think obsession with results creates success. It does not. It creates anxiety. They wake up thinking about outcomes. They measure themselves by progress they cannot fully control. They attach their emotional state to results that are not yet visible. That pressure slows them down. That is the key. Outcomes are delayed. Execution is immediate. When your mind lives in outcomes, it lives in the future. When it lives in execution, it lives in action. Action creates momentum. Anxiety kills it. Obsession with results makes effort feel heavy. Every action becomes a test. Every delay feels like failure. Every obstacle feels personal. That weight is unnecessary. Commitment to execution is lighter. You focus on what you can do today, what you can do now, what you can do next. Nothing more. That focus creates rhythm. Say the phrase clearly. I control actions, not outcomes. Repeat it. Emotional detachment removes desperation. Desperation is visible. It leaks into tone. It leaks into decisions. People feel it. Situations respond to it. Detached effort is clean. You work without pleading. You act without forcing. You persist without panic. Most people quit not because results are impossible. They quit because they monitor results too closely. They check too often. They judge too early. They react emotionally to normal delay. Detachment protects patience. Execution is mechanical. You show up. You do the work. You repeat. No drama required. Outcomes arrive on their own timeline. Attachment to outcomes creates emotional swings. Hope spikes. Doubt crashes. Motivation fluctuates. That instability breaks consistency. Detached people are steady. They do not need immediate proof. They do not need reassurance. They trust process. Trust creates endurance. Say it again. I control actions, not outcomes. When you detach from outcomes, you gain clarity. You see inefficiencies. You adjust systems. You refine execution. Attachment blinds you. It makes you chase quick wins instead of building foundations. Outcome obsession also leads to shortcuts. You rush. You compromise standards. You sacrifice quality for speed. Those shortcuts delay success. Detached execution does the opposite. It improves quality. It builds skill. It compounds. Even when results are invisible. Most mastery is built in phases where nothing seems to happen. Outcome-obsessed people panic during these phases. Detached people keep working. That difference decides who wins. Detachment does not mean apathy. It means discipline. You care deeply about the work. You refuse to let results dictate your state. That is strength. Anxiety asks, is this working yet? Execution asks, what is the next step? Only one produces progress. Here is a practical rule. If checking results affects your mood, check less. Increase action. Reduce monitoring. Momentum lives in motion, not measurement. Detached people find satisfaction in completion. Finishing the task. Meeting the standard. Showing up again. That satisfaction is sustainable. Results improve when attachment dissolves. Because your nervous system is calmer. Your thinking is clearer. Your actions are more precise. You stop forcing outcomes. You start allowing them. Most people try to control the wrong thing. They try to control outcomes. They neglect execution. Detached people reverse that. They dominate what is controllable. They release what is not. Say it again slowly. I control actions, not outcomes. Let it anchor you. Execution builds identity. Each completed action reinforces self-trust. Self-trust replaces anxiety. That internal shift changes everything. This chapter is about letting go without letting up. You release attachment. You increase discipline. That balance is rare. You are no longer chasing results. You are building systems. Systems outlive motivation. Systems outperform obsession. You have learned how to work without desperation. Now there is one final illusion to dismantle. The belief that everything is personal. You committed to execution. Next, you will learn how to stop internalizing what was never about you. Chapter 8. Nothing is personal, even when it feels like it is. The fastest way to lose control is to believe everything is about you. A comment, a tone, a reaction. Your mind rushes to interpretation, disrespect, rejection, judgment, and suddenly your emotions are activated. That is the trap. Most behavior has nothing to do with your value. It reflects the internal state of the person acting, their stress, their insecurity, their fear, their frustration. But emotional attachment convinces you to internalize it. You have a choice. You can absorb what was never meant for you, or you can step back and see it clearly. Detachment makes that possible. Say the phrase clearly. This is information, not identity. Repeat it. When someone lashes out, it is data. When someone ignores you, it is data. When something fails, it is data. It is not a verdict on who you are. Personalization distorts reality. It turns neutral events into emotional threats. It turns feedback into attack. It turns obstacles into self-doubt. That distortion drains power. Detached people separate events from self-worth. They do not merge what happened with who they are. That separation is freedom. Insults feel personal because ego is involved. Ego wants protection. Ego wants validation. Ego wants control. Detachment quiets ego, and clarity returns. Most insults are projections. Someone feels small, so they try to shrink you. Someone feels threatened, so they attack. Someone feels out of control, so they provoke. Seeing this removes emotional charge. Detached people do not defend their identity constantly. They do not argue about their value. They do not explain themselves to everyone. They know who they are. That certainty makes attacks irrelevant. Say it again. This is information, not identity. Setbacks also feel personal. A failure feels like proof. A delay feels like rejection. A mistake feels like incompetence. That interpretation is emotional. Detached thinking reframes setbacks as signals. What needs adjustment? What needs improvement? What needs patience? Nothing more. When you personalize failure, you freeze. When you depersonalize it, you learn. Learning restores momentum. Emotionally reactive people ask, why is this happening to me? Detached people ask, what does this teach me? Only one question leads forward. Personalization also creates unnecessary conflict. You react defensively. You escalate. You explain. Most conflicts die when you refuse to internalize them. Detached people choose curiosity over offense. Why is this person acting this way? What is influencing them? What does this reveal? Curiosity dissolves anger. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. Misunderstandings resolve themselves when you stop feeding them. Silence is often the cleanest response. Here is a practical shift. When something triggers you, remove the word me. They disrespected me becomes they acted disrespectfully. I failed becomes this attempt failed. Language shapes emotion. Neutral language restores control. Say it again. This is information, not identity. Detachment also protects confidence. Confidence built on external behavior is fragile. Confidence built on internal standards is stable. Other people's actions cannot shake it. You are not required to carry other people's emotional states. Their mood is not your responsibility. Their reaction is not your fault. Their behavior is not your burden. Detachment sets that boundary. Most emotional exhaustion comes from misattribution. You take responsibility for things you do not control. Detached people release that weight. This chapter is about reclaiming perspective. You stop making everything about you. You start seeing reality as it is. That shift reduces suffering immediately. When nothing is personal, everything becomes lighter. You think clearer. You respond better. You move faster. Because you are no longer defending an image. You are not numb. You are not indifferent. You are accurate. You have removed ego from interpretation. Now you are ready for a higher level of stability. A state where emotion no longer spikes or crashes. A state of neutrality. You learn to depersonalize. Next, you will learn to stabilize. Chapter 9. Make emotional neutrality your default state. Most people think calm is something you return to after stress, after conflict, after emotion runs its course. That belief keeps them unstable. Because calm should not be a recovery state. Calm should be your baseline. That is the key. Emotional neutrality is not emptiness. It is balance. It is the state where nothing spikes too high and nothing crashes too low. And that state is the foundation of consistency. Emotional spikes feel alive. Excitement, anger, urgency. But spikes create instability. After every spike comes a drop. After every emotional high comes fatigue. After every emotional low comes hesitation. That cycle drains momentum. Neutrality breaks the cycle. Neutrality keeps you steady. Say the phrase clearly. Unmoved means unchanged. Repeat it. Most people live in reaction cycles. Something happens. Emotion rises. Energy scatters. They spend their life recovering instead of progressing. Detached people eliminate the spike. They stay level. Neutrality allows you to operate without friction. You do not waste energy stabilizing yourself. You do not need time to cool down. You do not need to recover from your own reactions. That efficiency compounds. Emotional neutrality turns calm into default. You are not calm because nothing happened. You are calm because nothing owns you. That distinction matters. Here is the mistake most people make. They chase calm after chaos. But chaos is optional. The spike is optional. You have a choice. Neutrality does not mean you do not feel. It means feelings pass through without changing direction. Like weather moving through a stable structure. The structure remains. Detached people do not ask how do I feel today. They ask what needs to be done. Mood becomes irrelevant. That is consistency. Consistency builds trust. With others. With systems. With yourself. You become reliable. And reliability is power. Say it again. Unmoved means unchanged. Most emotional volatility comes from attachment. Attachment to outcomes. Attachment to opinions. Attachment to identity. Neutrality dissolves attachment. When nothing is clung to, nothing shakes you. Neutrality also sharpens judgment. Strong emotion narrows vision. Neutrality widens it. You see options. You see timing. You see consequences. That clarity is unavailable in emotional extremes. People often fear neutrality. They think it will make life dull. But neutrality does not remove meaning. It removes noise. Meaning remains. Drama disappears. Here is a practical shift. When something happens, do not label it good or bad immediately. Label it neutral. Let understanding come before emotion. That pause prevents escalation. Emotion wants interpretation. Neutrality delays it. And delay restores control. Neutrality also protects energy. Every emotional spike costs energy. Every crash costs recovery. Neutrality keeps energy stable. Stable energy sustains long-term effort. Detached people rarely feel burned out. Not because they do less, but because they waste less. They do not leak energy emotionally. Neutrality also creates authority. People trust what does not fluctuate. When your tone stays level, others adjust to you. You do not chase balance. You set it. Say it again. Unmoved means unchanged. This is where emotional mastery becomes visible. Not through dramatic restraint. Through boring consistency. Same response. Same pace. Same standards. Day after day. Most people want emotional peaks. Strong people want emotional stability. Stability wins over time. Neutrality allows you to respond instead of react. Responding is deliberate. Reacting is reflexive. You already learned the difference. Neutrality makes responding automatic. This chapter is about removing volatility from your inner world. Volatility creates noise. Noise creates mistakes. Neutrality creates silence. Silence creates accuracy. You no longer need emotional highs to feel alive. You no longer fear emotional lows. You remain centered. You have built control. You have built distance. You have built consistency. Now there is only one step left. Complete ownership of your internal state. You stabilized your emotions. Next, you will claim final authority. Chapter 10. Emotional detachment is ultimate mental strength. Most people think power announces itself. It raises its voice. It demands attention. It reacts. That is not power. True power is invisible. It is the absence of reaction. That is the key. When nothing outside you can move your emotional state, you are free. Free from manipulation. Free from pressure. Free from chaos. That freedom is strength. Emotionally detached people do not advertise control. They do not threaten. They do not escalate. They do not explain themselves excessively. They remain steady. And steadiness is intimidating. Say the phrase clearly. Nothing outside me decides my state. Repeat it. Detachment makes you unreadable. People cannot predict your reaction. They cannot pull emotional responses from you. They cannot rush you. That unpredictability removes leverage. Most manipulation depends on emotion. Fear, guilt, urgency, flattery. When those tools stop working, control shifts back to you. Detached people are internally governed. Their mood is not decided by traffic. Not decided by comments. Not decided by delays. It is decided by principle. That internal governance is rare. Internal governance creates stability. Stability creates trust. Trust creates influence. Influence creates power. Quietly. Say it again. Nothing outside me decides my state. Emotional detachment also sharpens presence. When you are not reacting internally, you are fully aware externally. You listen better. You notice patterns. You sense timing. That awareness gives you advantage. Most people leak power through explanation. They feel the need to justify, to clarify, to defend. Detached people let results speak. They do not chase understanding. They allow it to arrive. This level of detachment does not isolate you. It centers you. You can engage deeply without losing yourself. You can care without attachment. That balance is mastery. True mental strength is not control over others. It is control over self. And self-control is tested under pressure. Pressure reveals weakness. Emotion spikes. Tone changes. Decisions rush. Detached people look the same under pressure. That consistency commands respect. Say it again. Nothing outside me decides my state. This is the end of emotional dependency. You no longer outsource your peace. You no longer wait for circumstances to align. You carry stability with you. Emotional detachment is not armor. It is alignment. Your thoughts, actions, and standards are unified. No internal conflict. No emotional tug of war. Just direction. At this level, silence becomes powerful. You do not fill gaps. You do not react to provocation. You let moments pass. Moments reveal themselves when you do not interrupt them. Detached people become anchors. Others feel calmer around them. Conversations slow. Chaos settles. Without effort. This is not something you turn on. It is something you live. Daily discipline. Daily awareness. Daily restraint. That practice compounds. You are no longer controlled by what happens. You are defined by how you respond. And your response is chosen. Say it one final time. Nothing outside me decides my state. Let it be permanent. You have learned how to detach without becoming cold. How to observe without disengaging. How to stay calm without suppressing. You have reclaimed your inner world. Emotional detachment is not an escape from life. It is mastery within it. And mastery is quiet, unseen, unshaken, unstoppable. This is the path to mental strength. And now it is yours. Emotional detachment is not withdrawal. It is self-ownership. When you stop reacting, you start leading. When emotions stop controlling you, clarity takes over. When clarity leads, your life stabilizes. You do not need to be louder. You do not need to be harder. You need to be unshaken. From this moment forward, pause before reacting. Observe before responding. Detach before deciding. The challenge is simple. For the next 24 hours, let nothing control your emotional state. If nothing moves you, nothing owns you.